And hello, everybody. How are you all doing today? We are doing something a little bit different. I may look a bit tired. I assume you'll be seeing my face. You won't be seeing Megan's, even though you probably should actually. Maybe I should get Megan to put her webcam on, but then I would need to catch
No.
it, and she's pretty shy. So, we won't do that. So we'll just do mine, but Megan is here.
Yes, hello.
So today we're gonna be doing something a little different. So in my opinion, okay, I'm gonna just explain myself here really quick, right? So in my opinion, E3 as we know it is probably dead because this will be the first year without like that E3's been like proper like canceled, not because of like anything going on in the world, simply because nobody wants to show up and have a presentation at E3, right?
Yeah.
Nintendo's doing their own thing, Xbox is doing their own thing, Sony's doing their own thing. They don't really need E3 anymore. And although I know E3 is coming back for 2024 as of this recording, supposedly, I don't know how it's
Yeah.
going to be. I feel like it's going to be a very different E3. And I just feel like E3 as we know it is currently dead. So to do that, I figured I had this idea and I talked to Megan about it, and she's very hesitant, but she eventually agreed to do it with me. That it might be fun to go and watch some E3s of the past and see how they were. Even some of the E3s that I personally haven't seen anything on. Now it's only going to be the ones I can find videos for, mind you. So
Yeah.
some might be missed, some might be skipped. I don't know. I need to be able to find them, right? That's kind of thing. YouTube seems to have a lot of them, but maybe not all of them. So just be aware that some might not be seen, some might be seen, some might be missed, etc. But this one I actually think is really special because it is the very first E3 in 1995, uploaded by this guy here, Anthony Parisi. 100,000 views. Not granted, not a lot of people probably would have seen this. So this is kind of, I do feel like this is kind of special, to be honest. The very first E3. So this has the Sega keynote, the Sony keynote, and the Nintendo keynote. We will watch the keynotes. Then we'll go through the show floor. But I think for the show floor, we're going to speed it up, probably on 2 times speed. Just because we don't, it's just a guy's personal view of the show floor, which, although I think is cool, it's like a 3.5 hour long video. And I feel like we can probably speed through some of it. Some might get cut, some might not be. I'm not too sure I'm going to upload this, if it's going to be every day. There's a lot for me to figure out right now. You guys will know by the time you see this. Anyway, we should probably start. So, Megan, are we ready for the first ever E3?
Yeah.
See what I mean by she doesn't sound really enthusiastic, but yet, she
Like,
sounds enthusiastic enough.
yeah, like I think it'll be fun. I'm just dreading how much content we're gonna have to watch. So yay. We're gonna have a good time though.
It's gonna be a good time. It's gonna be a lot, but it's gonna be a good time. E3 1995. I don't know what my volume's at for this, but we'll see. So this is like 95 era camcorder too, right? Like check this out, right? Like isn't this something? Yeah.
Yeah.
First E3, not a lot of people. I don't even know what the attendance was for this one. See, I should have my info up.
You should. You're slacking.
I am. So E3 1995. Let's see if they have the attendance on here. One from May 11th to 13th. 50,000 total attendees.
I mean, considering it was the first exhibition and this was like, I assume in Los Angeles, it's not bad.
Yes, this was in Los Angeles. So I believe this would have been even before the PlayStation came out. Just to give like a bit of context for what we're going to be seeing here. I'm pretty sure this is the first time that Sony's gotten into the video game thing. Sega would have still been the biggest deal, I think. I think this is when they're starting to wane a little bit. But the fact that they have a keynote address in here, it tells me that it's still pretty important by 95.
Yeah, because I mean, I could be wrong, but it wasn't the PlayStation like actually announced during E3 95?
It might have been, so we'll probably see the announcement of the PlayStation. Oh, and look, that's the dude. That's a boss in that one PlayStation All-Stars game.
Oh, yeah. Their quote-unquote mascot until they just got rid of it.
Yeah, it just kind of went away. I like it's in like full-on Japanese too, except for the Max part.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is like 360p, by the way. I can't go back in time and make it HD, so it's gonna look like crap. But I mean, what can you really do? You know?
At least until we get to some of the newer stuff.
Yeah, at least until we get to some of the newer stuff. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to bump the mic. Sorry about that.
Ooh.
Well, if Megan didn't hear it, that's not too bad either. Head for Saturn. Oh, the Sega Saturn. Yeah, the Sega Saturn would have been a thing. I
Yeah,
don't.
that would have been a pretty new thing.
Yeah, I don't know if that would have been out by now, but
No, because from what I recall, they announced the Sega Saturn. I want to say it was pretty close to when E3 came out in '95, and they announced it to be pretty high price. So Sony basically undercut them by $100 when they announced the PlayStation. From what I remember, anyway.
So looking at this, it was already out in Japan in '94, but it came out in North America actually the day E3 happened. I have ads. Oops. I forgot.
Ooh.
My ad block isn't gonna work. My ad block's been fucky lately. So actually, you know what? I might take one moment because I forgot about that.
If you do
Mad Block's been really fucky on Chrome lately, where it hasn't really been working, weirdly enough. So I might actually cut this real quick. I'm sorry. Give me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Okay, and we're back. I turned it on and it seems fine now. So anyway, as I was saying before we ready to continue, Megan?
Yeah.
Okay. So before the ad really cut me off, I think the Saturn came out in North America actually the day of E3. Because May 11th.
Yeah.
Let me turn up a little bit. And yeah, it's gonna come out of one side of the year. I might fix that in editing for everybody else. I can't do anything about that for me and Megan though.
May 12th, 1995 will be Yogi Berra's birthday.
Yogi Berra's birthday, whoa.
Yes, his 70th.
Ooh.
So we all need to prepare ourselves for a heavier than usual onslaught of yogiisms from radio and TV commentators. And if I may, I'd like to kick off the birthday observance by repeating my own personal favorite of his. When I come to a fork in the road, I take it. Now that's not only vintage Berra, it's also good for kicking off speeches. It can even be construed without an awful lot of effort to be representative of what I'm about to say today. I'm going to discuss choices.
Choices, huh?
And E3 works as a pretty good symbol of some change our industry is experiencing.
Is that the Saturn?
Here is this great big show.
This must be the Saturn, yeah.
For interactive entertainment. CES, great success that it's been, was never really designed for us. It related better to an older culture. It forced some of the most creative companies on Earth to at least figuratively put on gray flannel suits and, well, sort of fit into a TV buying.
By the way, just because we probably will talk over some things they say, like it's really hard for even me to hear. I'll probably post the video in the description for anybody else that wants to listen.
Electronics business. Frankly, I don't miss the endless rows of car stereo speakers and cellular phones.
Interactive entertainment.
We've broken out to become a whole new category, a whole new culture for that matter. This business resists our catastrophes. It defies.
Yeah, one thing I want to just kind of point out is I find it really interesting how early E3 seemed much more like a business thing.
Sometimes, in order
Like
Yeah.
here's a proper professional business thing. But later E3's all about like crowds cheering and big ass stage with people standing on it.
I want to question a couple of assumptions.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure exactly when that changed. I know for I want to say maybe the first 10 years or so, it was very much for business and press only.
Myths, really. And like
Potentially.
all good myths,
Well,
they
boy,
are
the myths.
persistent and persuasive. That's a joke. Anyone anybody's got the sources. There are two of them. The first is about PCs.
PCs?
The likelihood of that platform eating the game business for lunch.
Okay, I want to pause that real quick. So we're gonna pause here every now and again too, because this isn't gonna be. We're gonna have fun here. We're gonna pause it every now and again when we need to, and rewind and fast forward and stuff. But that's really funny because I don't know for everybody who may have heard it, but he mentioned like the myth of PCs eating. What was it? The game industry for lunch. Is that what
Yeah.
he said? Yeah,
Something like that.
like that's actually really funny considering. I mean, PC is still pretty much top dog, to be honest, when it comes to video games. Yeah, at least in my opinion. I mean, consoles are still really, really top notch too. But like, no matter who you talk to, everybody will always say like, "Oh, PC." PCs are generally the way to go, right? If you're able
Yeah.
to. So not much has changed since '95. It's not really a myth, Mr. Sega keynote speaker. Maybe that's why Sega didn't last. Maybe they didn't really see the future that was PCs. That's funny though.
Yeah, because even like their PC ports that they've come out with the last few years have all been kind of bad, mostly because they keep shoving de novo in them.
Okay, that's funny. Okay, I guess we'll continue then. We got a lot to get through here.
We do.
Success and failure of our business will always be measured by our acceptance.
By the way, Megan, if you ever want me to pause the like rewind or anything, just say so too.
Let's look at the
There
Yeah,
isn't
it's all
anything
good.
specifically you want to point
It
out.
doesn't in truth take much thought to see why the first myth has become as prevalent as it is. Examining some of the facts of the PC is killer whale theory, we often find the following. Multimedia PCs have sold fast over the last 2 years. They are, at first blush, obvious platforms for the increasingly sophisticated games our audiences are calling for. And those PC sales numbers will be a compelling message to game developers.
PC myth.
And you know, if I've just spent $1,700 to $3,000 or more on a new multimedia platform for my home office, don't I want to get as much use out of that expense as possible? Well, sure I do. Multimedia platforms have some technical advantages over TV-based systems too. PC monitors typically offer better resolution.
And those aren't really myths, to be honest.
Back to the developer community. If I develop games to the PC,
Yeah.
I don't have to pay anybody a royalty.
I mean, maybe back then you could argue not as much, but I mean, I feel like PC always had the technical advantage.
And now let's examine these in a little more detail.
I feel like they did for the most part, yeah. Because, like, I mean, when Windows 95 came out, it was kind of when they started becoming better for dealing with, I guess, gaming in general, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. I also think this is really interesting, by the way. It's a pretty interesting statistic. 10% of US households own a multimedia PC. Nowadays, that number is probably jumped up a ton, right?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 95%.
Yeah, at least like 95%, I'd say. I feel like most places have at least some sort of PC to some degree. So
Even
that's
if
interesting.
PC's just their phone.
Yeah, exactly. Like you may as well consider a smartphone a PC, just a small handheld one. So this is really interesting. See, now, it's funny because a lot of people that might watch this eventually in the future or whatever might honestly be too young to kind of remember this era. I don't even really remember it. And I was born before it, just like slightly, right? But it's really interesting just to see this and go like, yeah, not many PCs are still very new, especially to a household. You didn't really, you actually went outside for stuff, you know? It's like you didn't have Google, you had a dictionary and everything, you know? You had like a book you had to read. So I just find that kind of funny. Like this is literally like a good time capsule for the era for video games and all things video game, you know?
On the other hand,
Yeah.
30% of U.S. households, and that number's about 30%.
Man, 30% owned a game machine? That's definitely jumped up higher.
I'd be curious of what that would be at now.
Oh, what's their estimate? Oh, I want to see that. Oh, it's so hard to see. 94, it's like 35%?
Yeah.
And 45% probably later, or maybe 35 to 40%. That's interesting.
Now, if you're a developer interested in the big markets, where logically are you going to look first? Last year, a PC game that sold 200,000 units would be an enormous hit. That 200,000 units is good business by anybody's definition.
That would be below expectations these days.
That'd be way below expectations these days.
Sold 1 to 3 million.
I don't remember what it was. I know EA published something a while ago where they're like, oh, we sold 5 million copies. That's below expectations.
I guess that even goes to show you just how many more places do own a quote-unquote game machine now, right?
Yeah.
Because, you know, as that goes up, the number is expected to go up too. But yeah, like that would absolutely not be a hit by today's market.
At this moment in time,
That'd be considered a colossal failure.
let's face it, Sega, Nintendo, Nintendo,
Yeah.
and maybe a few others in our business are still the only real big game in town.
I'm sorry, Sega. I don't think you make it that far past this year.
I want to get as much use out of it as possible.
So, because like the Dreamcast came out in like 2001, right?
I believe so. And it was a good system. It was just weirdly enough ahead of its time.
Yeah, basically that's what I've heard about it, but it's just no one adopted it.
Well, yeah, that's the problem. Like, honestly, I never owned one. I would love to own a Dreamcast sometime. But like, it was the thing I've heard about it is it was ahead of its time, but no one adopted it. Like, it's actually, from what I understand, a very incredible system. It just kind of sucks that Sony kind of got, not Sony, Sega kind of got shat on. Maybe it was too expensive. I don't remember. Like, compared to the PS2 and stuff.
I think for the Dreamcast it was probably too expensive, and because of the way their discs are published, I think it was very specific, so a lot of people didn't want to jump onto developing for Dreamcast. So they had a very limited library, from what I recall.
Wait a minute, they had a bit of a laugh there. I want to see what happened. But yeah, no, I think that might have been it too. I think maybe it was just a bit too expensive.
Yeah.
And I think you're right, to be honest.
And you get one of several messages, all of which basically say, surely you did not think it was going to be this easy.
Okay. I mean, installing games on PC back then was a pain in the ass. You had to install like so many discs. Like how some games had 20 discs.
So I just looked it up because I was curious. So it launched on September 9th, 1999 in the States, and it sold for a price of $199.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna see how much the PlayStation launched for.
And Macs aren't immune from all this either, trust me. So the story goes on in most houses for hours, and then finally the supreme moment arrives, the music pipes up, the animation begins, it's working. And then you realize, hey, I don't know if I want my 10-year-old playing anywhere near my home office in the business plan.
Yeah, so it looks like the PlayStation launched for $299 as the debut price. After the announcement, Sega dropped the Saturn price by $100 to match, but the PlayStation sold way more than the Saturn did.
Okay. What about the Dreamcast? Because I thought you were looking at Dreamcast stuff.
For $199.
Okay. Okay, that's interesting. I was just gonna point this out here really quick. I paused it because I heard you wanted to like talk about that, but I also want to point out what they're talking about here too. You're doing fine, I promise.
Okay.
But I see what they're trying to do here. They're trying to make the point that PC's kind of more of a pain in the ass to get a game started. But if with the game console, you just kind of put the game in and you're good. And I think what he's trying to say here is, you spend all this time getting your game installed, but maybe you don't want your child like in your computer area, or maybe the game isn't good for that child. Is I think what he's trying to get on. So it's like you spent all that time doing that when you could just put like a cartridge or a disc in, and then you're good to go. So it's an interesting point. I do like how Sega's thing so far has been just anti-PC, right? Which I find kind of neat. I wonder if the game companies are going to team up to like try to take down PC at E3.
I mean, probably. I do like how it's kind of gone full circle, though, where we went from hating PCs because consoles were easier, and now consoles take more updates, and it's almost easier to play something on PC half the time.
Yeah, it's true, eh? It's much more convenient, typically.
Like, I miss the days of getting a game and be able to plug it into the console and just start the game and not wait, like, 10 to 30 minutes to download updates or install the disc or whatever the case may be.
It starts to sound like a pretty good investment. I think people who dismiss the dedicated game platform have never gone through this. People who write about technology are, for the most part, pretty adept at technology. They judge computers, understandably, I think, like you might judge any high-performance technical machine. If it develops a quirk or two, that's the name of the high-tech game. But in our game, we know things don't work that way. If you're truly going to succeed in the consumer business, your product has to work perfectly, right out of the box, first time, every time. Now, is Windows 95 going to deliver the kind of idiot-proof operability?
I mean, he's making a good point for back in the day. I will say that. It was just
Yeah.
easier to plug it in and play.
Probably yes. Certainly that's where it's aimed.
Oh, Windows
Yeah.
95. I miss you, kind of.
And by then, the game
Installing
business
games
will
and
be
programs
so
on
further
Windows
ahead,
wasn't really
delivering the next
consumer friendly at the
generation
time.
entertainment
Yeah, no, it was very
experiences.
much a pain.
Here's what we're about to consider. A PC that could marginally run some of the newer games we're talking about today will require a Pentium 120 megahertz PC chip with Windows 95,
Boy, 120 megabits.
3D graphics accelerator, 16 megabits of RAM,
Pathetic.
and no video
An
RAM.
accelerator
That's
card.
not your average multimedia PC. This is power user stuff. Hobbyist
Meanwhile, we
level
have new console games like COD that are upwards of like 200 gigabytes.
Well, I kind of think that's something he said too. He's like, and these are like high-end PCs we're talking about here. So amazing to see just how much things have changed.
And in the very near
Yeah.
future, Sega will be getting into it. See, we're approaching the fork in the road, and we're taking it. But the
I'd be
truth
curious
is,
to hear what
PC
someone from
games aren't
1995
gonna
would
kill
think
game
if they
machines
knew where we'd
any
be
more than
like
VCRs
30 years
killed
later.
the movie business.
Yeah, I'd be
The
curious
thing I'm
too.
dealing with, let's not forget, is the kind of all
That's why you just made everybody watching this that was around that time feel really old, me included.
I'm sorry. I'm almost there too.
The answer
I got like 2 more
is
months.
two great things. Both are optimized for different functions. 70% of the whole video game business today consists of fast action and sports titles. A concept that most of the multimedia PCs shipped last year and this year cannot deliver. Most publishers today believe PC entertainment software sales will level off at about
I do like how they spent so
20-25%
much of their
of total
presentation putting
entertainment
down their
software.
competition before
But
talking
even
about
this
anything
kind of
that they're
market share
doing
predicting
or any
against
games they're
this,
releasing.
much bigger
Yeah,
vision
it's not even their
of
console
PC
competition either. It's literally just PC
At least
competition.
what most homes have now
Yeah, I
and
know, right?
extrapolates from there. I want to move outside of that box. I think even the amazingly sophisticated games you're going to be seeing at E3 today only hint at the kind of immersive experience consumers are going to be demanding in years to come. That's going to be delivered by big screen TVs, surround sound, home theater stuff that will move the whole question away from the level of, will it be in the or the home office? Because it will be neither. This will be multi-dimensional, truly interactive experiences that will involve the whole family, and they'll take place in a room dedicated not to sleeping, not to work, but to entertainment. Maybe the real message here is that our business is simply going to be more difficult to analyze and predict. Remember, kids and adults alike are going to be more exposed to the fun and excitement of interactive games in the next few years than they've ever been before.
See, kids and adults alike. I like how he did point that out. I was like, no, video games aren't just for kids. 'Cause I think that was a pretty big thing at this point too. Is that video games are like a child's thing. It wasn't really until like
We're seeing game purchasing
about the 2010s-ish where it became where video games weren't necessarily seen as a kid's thing by the vast majority of people.
Yeah, because I know especially at this time, like I know the PlayStation in particular did gear a lot of its games towards an older, mature audience, but definitely before the PlayStation came out, it was because they're only really for kids.
Absolutely. But in forms and platforms we haven't yet dreamed of. This is a business that is ready to explode, and there's room for plenty of competition.
He's right though. It was a business that did end up exploding.
Is not the enemy. Not
Yeah.
if you're the largest content provider of software, as Sega is. Now let's move on to the second myth, that your life and mine will forever depend on the whims and attitudes of the 6 to 17-year-old market. I hope some of what I just finished saying about greater consumer expectations will begin to put the lie to this idea. Because this once hard and fast reliance on a singular age group and demographic is changing and changing fast. In 1992, the market was 61% dominated by 6 to 17-year-olds. In 94, the figure was 55%. Now our reliance, Sega's reliance on the age segment has dropped to industry average. In 92, 62% of our sales went to them. But in 94, the number had dropped to 51%. In other words, 49%, almost half, of our business is already with adults 18 or older. And that trend is going to continue. We're going to see a broad
I mean, he's right.
of ages and demographics buying.
Listen, I'm pretty sure he's right.
entertainment, period. Most savvy industry.
Yeah, I'd say it's
completely
pretty
agree with this.
close to games being like for under 18 and over 18. Like I think once you get past 40 or so is when it kind of starts to drop.
I mean, potentially, but I mean, I feel like with our generation, I think a lot of them just did kind of keep playing video games, you know?
Well, that's what I mean, right? Like once you get people nowadays that are over 40, you probably see the amount of people who actually play games as a hobby drop down. But then if you think about it, it kind of makes sense because 40 years ago it would have been like in the 1980s when the first consoles were just coming out.
Yeah.
And I know there's obviously exceptions to the rule, it's just general trends, right?
So as we begin to skew our products forward and toward an older, more sophisticated consumer, we're giving kids room to realize their aspirations. We have hot new products awaiting launch on all our platforms. As just a sampling of this, let me mention Comic Zone, a Genesis product.
Comic Zone, dude, classic.
A whole new game genre, bringing the nation's #1 print medium, comics, to life.
He seemed like he got startled by how loud it was.
Probably.
Most popular TV and movie licensed characters to game.
I assume maybe there's like some kind of promotional video playing that we unfortunately don't get to see. But, yeah.
Yeah, I would assume so. It's just a little weird.
High-end arcade technology into home systems.
Virtual Fighter. Virtua Fighter.
Yeah, Virtua Fighter. So I guess it's showing the power of the Saturn.
Yeah, it seems like it.
Because that did come out on the Saturn, right? Or was that
so.
Genesis?
55 new titles this year for 32X, 40 new titles, and for Game Gear 35 new titles. And as I noted before, the job of analyzing this business is going to get harder. Predicting revenues was never the simple population modeling exercise that we all wanted it to be. Now the variables we will
So it was originally released in October 1993, so this must have been on the Genesis.
Okay.
Let me take a qualify myself in this business.
I mean, it makes sense. Sega at this point was still really kind of going and living off the Genesis, especially in North America.
Yeah.
I mean, since Saturn didn't come out until that day.
Who has a better sense of the mind of the consumer than Sega. Yes, we got our
Yeah, I mean, it's possible that they're working on a port for it or possibly development into Virtual Fighter 2 time.
Compelling and so addictive that you put quarter after quarter in just to increase your score. And that means something. We are the largest creator and marketer of arcade and consumer interactive entertainment in the world. I noted that one of my best friends among the competition said in a recent article, our heritage claim was much overused. Trust me when I say this, if any other company could claim the heritage of 40 plus years of understanding the mind of the game player, it would. What it's yielded us is unqualified in the most important criterion for success in this business. We create interactive entertainment hits in and outside the home. No other company does this. There's a new consumer mind out there, older, more affluent. This is a group that has positively proven it can be drawn to gaming when gaming delivers the kind of immersive experiences they want. To those of you who point at Myst as an example of the kind of CD game young adults want, I say that's right. And we'll do that kind better on our CD-ROM game platforms. Only our games will be faster, more sensually overwhelming, far more social and interactive. So what matters to this new consumer mind? It all boils down to this. People want a great immersive experience that helps them relax, escape, compete, win, and most importantly, have fun. No matter what kind of tech talk you hear in the next few days, and we'll certainly be contributing to that, the game is what counts, not what makes it great. In early movie days, it was technology. The first to deliver sound, the first to deliver color. So too with games, the first to deliver great speed, the first to deliver realistic sound and color. Now we believe our Genesis 32X and Sega Saturn technologies are better than their respective competitors. But we realize it's the software the consumer cares about. We're at the point where the experience of the game, the story inside.
Yeah, I do find it really interesting that, like, Sega was really the only company that I know of that really kept multiple generations of consoles alive, like probably a bit longer than they should have, to be honest.
Probably. I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of the reason why they went under, because they couldn't support all those consoles at once.
I mean, I think it is because like they had the Genesis that they were still pushing. They had the 32X on the Genesis that they're still pushing, and now the Saturn. And he's talking about all of them, like all three of them in this. You know?
Yeah.
So they still definitely had the idea to keep the Genesis and the 32X going with the Saturn.
Obvious changes in the games of the future. Side-scrolling games, for all the fun and success they've brought us, will ultimately give way to newer, more complex genres. Now please note this, I said ultimately give way. A long time from now. We expect to sell millions of Sonic and other great side-scrolling games over the next 2 or 3 years. So am I talking about a revolution here? Not really. But I am absolutely saying it's time for the press and the analysts to take off their cautionary hats for a change, to move the meter a tick or so to the right, to see that this is an industry that merely paused to take a breath before resuming its stunning growth pattern. This is a $5 billion industry that was $1 billion 8 years ago. And it's going to grow, my numbers, 9 or 10 billion by the year 2000.
Now it's soon more than that.
11 billion.
By a lot.
Up to this point, a lot of what I've said has been pretty qualitative in nature.
Like, I don't be surprised if GTA 6 are like, yeah, it's a $5 billion game right here.
Yeah.
And then you can look back at this and go, whoa, that was like literally the whole industry back then.
Now, if you conservatively translate that to the U.S. market, we expect to sell over 3 million units here in the first full year on the market. We think we'd sell more, but the extraordinary success in Japan means some limits to the supply in the U.S. are inevitable. We believe Sega Saturn sales in the U.S. before Christmas will be in the neighborhood of 600,000 units. You may have seen some argument in the trade press between Sega and Sony about who sold the most in the Japanese market. Well, we did.
Good job, Sega. You hold on to that for a little bit.
One key Asian market. Together, the sales are fantastic. They mean a broader market than we've ever experienced before.
This kind of makes me feel bad for Sega.
$9 or $10 billion.
Because they're like still a big enough of a deal at this point. And they're talking like big and they seem confident. But in like another year or two, they're not really going to be big anymore. I mean, they're still going to be a big company, but they're not going to have any consoles or anything. They're not going to be considered one of the main game companies, you know?
Yeah.
Hit that bigger, broader group of consumers like nothing's ever been.
And I feel like that's kind of like an age like milk comment too, where it's like, well, who sold more in Japan, us or Sony? Well, we did. But then Sony's gonna completely take over the North American market with the PlayStation.
Well, yeah.
Daytona's the #1 grossing arcade game worldwide today.
Oh, is that Gran Turismo? No, it wouldn't be. Would it? Was that on Sega?
No, I don't think so. That's a Sony game.
Our audiences say they want 360.
I don't know enough Sega franchises, so I'm not entirely sure what that would be.
Super 3D visuals and stereo sound. Games like Panzer Dragoon will more than satisfy them.
I forgot Panzer Dragoon was Sega.
It was, yeah. Still need to get around to playing the remaster of that came out a few years ago.
Yeah, you should.
And now, with the help of my able and charming assistant, Tim Dunley, let me show you what a top arcade hit worldwide looks like on the Sega Saturn platform.
Ah, you can see a port of an arcade game.
Ever done. It's #1 in Japan. It has a cult following, and it's already the top 5 arcade hit in the U.S. and Europe. There is computer modeling, animation, all of these fighters, real fighters, real human beings practicing different martial arts skills. The computer captured their motion, and then we generate these records. We're generating many hundreds of thousands of textured polygons per second. Oh, you lost? Or did you win? You won. Oh, good.
Good job. Man, even back then they had like live demos, so that's pretty cool.
And that
That is really cool.
On Saturn looks as good as it does in the arcade.
Except it's very different. Nowadays, to be like, and here's the guy to come out and play the game. He'd come out, he'd wave, he'd say, hello, I am so-and-so. I've done so-and-so on this game. And then maybe an error would happen, and they'd make an achievement out of it later.
Yeah.
So that's referencing Just Cause, or whatever. Uncharted, I mean, there you go.
Uncharted, yes.
Whatever, Just Cause, Uncharted, same thing, right? Anyway.
No. You got like a Tomb Raider type game versus like a open world GTA type game with grappling hooks.
True. Yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I don't have anything else to say.
Oh, I thought you had something you wanted to say.
No, it's okay. I like how you can kind of tell even in this demo with the hockey that they still haven't quite got to the 3D yet. They're doing like the Doom 3D.
Yeah, the kind of like faux 3D, 2.5D.
Yeah. This looks cool.
Yeah, I don't know what this is.
I don't know, it's like a side-scrolling platformer.
What was it? Oh, actually, wait, yeah, we can, you know what? I got the power to be able to go back in time. Clockwork Knight. Okay, so we'll need to keep that in mind, because maybe it'd be fun to play sometime. Worldwide Soccer. Yeah, you're right, they do have a very, well, I guess that's kind of like 3D-esque. Oh, Myst. Oh, dude, classic.
I've heard Myst is really good, I just never got into it.
Yeah, I can't really, I did play Myst a little bit, like way back in the day. I can't really say I know much about it, but I know it's just very, it's either very creepy or very calm and relaxing, depending on who you talk to.
Yeah, because I tried playing a bit of it long time ago, mind you, but I wasn't really into it just because at the time I didn't really play a lot of 2D adventure games. I still don't really play a lot, but I've heard many, many good things about it all the time.
Here's one that isn't done, but will be ready by Christmas.
Ooh.
Ooh. That's some pretty cool effects they got on the cutscene, huh?
Yeah. No entry.
Nice.
Fuck you, Romans. There's always an entry for a fast car. Oh, it's taking out the whole Coliseum. Gosh.
Why did they build it out of Jenga blocks?
Goodbye, Rome. All it took was one car to take out a former empire.
Yogi also said you can see a lot just by looking. And after looking at that stuff, I find it hard to believe young adults aren't going to find these games appealing. In fact, I believe everyone will find these games so irresistible that people are going to make the time and the budget to buy and play them. Is there developer motivation? Judge by yourself. More than 100 third parties are now developing Sega Saturn software for 1995, and we anticipate a full library of 80 outstanding third-party titles on retail shelves by Christmas of this year.
It's a lot.
The bottom line, perhaps
That is a
the
lot.
understandable bottom line,
Within like 6 months? Jeez.
Yeah.
market saturation. Simply blown away by this kind of
I
product.
can't remember the last time we had a launch library that would have been that good by that period of time.
We'll be showing similarly.
Well, see, that's kind of interesting point with this too, is because the system did come out in Japan earlier. You don't really get that anymore. Now it's all like worldwide releases. So it's kind of interesting to think about that in North America they might have a larger library by default because they've already been developing for the system.
True, it just depends on how many of them actually get localizations and ports, right?
Yeah.
A custom sound chip and a digital signal processor yields up to 32 voices.
Maybe one day we'll have it where Persona comes out here and in Japan at the same time.
I mean, maybe. I could see P6 having like a worldwide release. I mean, hell, talking about Sega, you know, like I feel like they would push Atlas to do that.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of curious what's going to happen with P6 just because, well, they got bought up by Sega between 5 and 6 launching, right?
Yeah.
Because it was about, I want to say it was about a year and a half that we had to wait between Japan and North America to get Persona 5 originally.
Because I think it's very rare nowadays to have separate release days for games.
Yeah, and I do remember like back in 2013 when Pokemon X and Y came out, it was a very big deal because that was the first time we were actually getting the Pokemon game at the same time as Japan.
Yeah.
In advertising, for example, is our
Well, from a marketing perspective, I mean, it makes sense, right? Like, and back then, it would have been more of a, like, oh, we gotta let them, we gotta localize it, and this. But now that just kind of happens at the same time, I think, right?
Well, yeah, because all the cartridges have all the languages on them now. They're not different cartridges, so it kind of makes sense just to work on them all at once.
Yeah.
Then you're also controlling quality control between the localizations as well.
If you add in the kind of media purchased by the big retailers, such as Toys R Us and Walmart and Target, the figure balloons to $500 million. A keynote speech is no place for a point-by-point explanation of our marketing plan.
Yeah, I remember that with video games too. Because I remember with the Final Fantasy 10 games, like 10 and 10 too, they did come out in Japan first, and I remember being very eager for 10 2. Being like, oh, it's out in Japan already, and I want to play it now. This is a picture that came out in Japan first. Hey, Doggo.
I would assume it did. I don't know. I just remember one conversation when I was in elementary school where one of my classmates was trying to tell me that Pokemon Ruby was a thing, and I'm like, no, it's not. Because I didn't understand it came out in Japan first.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
In fact, I cannot imagine a product category with a closer connection between successful advertising and product successes. But we're not backing away from the challenge. On the contrary, I think we move even closer to the edge. We might even be establishing new edges. This is not going to be simulation of gameplay so much as depiction of how the game player will feel when engaged with Sega Saturn. Our vision is to replicate the sensory overload this kind of gameplay will induce. The advertising objective? To create such a desire for the games that they will literally sell themselves. Here's a 60-second spot that we will be running as soon as we can manage.
A 60-second spot, huh? So we get to see an ad?
Welcome to the theater of the eye. Ron, Collins, report to the orbital side.
Oh, nice. We're trimming the toenails. What's that?
Alright, sure.
This is the brain. What's going on down there?
I like that they just took all the clips from like the different games that we saw and put them in this trailer.
That is really funny. Well, the nervous system is going into overload.
What else can go wrong?
Surgeon Synapse on line 2. It's the sphincter.
Okay, that's interesting. Thank you, Sega.
That was actually kind of disturbing a little bit.
Man, video game and console ads are weird, man.
Yeah, they were pretty weird back then. The one I remember the most would have been like a couple of the first ones with the PS3 and the creepy baby.
Yeah. No, we'll get there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure we'll see those. Those are just the ones that always stick out to me the most when I'm thinking of very surreal commercials.
You know, thinking about it, I guess at this point, Sega was kind of like what Sony would eventually become. Where Sega was like, okay, our main competitor, Nintendo, they have a lot more childlike games. So let's go for a more mature approach with all of our stuff, right?
Yeah.
Which is probably why they have commercials like this.
Probably.
Because I could see Sony doing something like this like later on, you know? I'm pretty sure they did, even. Not even like counting the weird baby ones.
I would assume they did, but I don't really recall seeing commercials for any of the PlayStation or PlayStation 2 ones. It was mostly the PS3 ones is when I started remembering them. But we'll see them as we go, I'm sure.
Probably. Hell, we can even look some up later when we get to those eras. It might be fun. Might be fun.
Might be.
Man, Sega really does do what Nintendo don't.
Yeah.
So get your rods
Oh,
and
he's got a
cones
hat
ready.
too. Nice.
Our advertising is very different. We're communicating how the body, the eyes, the ears, the nerves, and yes, the sphincter react to this new immersive experience.
It was kind of interesting they went for that approach, because as far as I recall, the Sega Saturn did pretty well, right?
I don't know, because wasn't it like?
all the opportunities we can to make this business
Let me see.
And since I
It's okay, I can look it up.
remarks with an announcement, I may as well finish with another. We started our
I can see the weird
Sega
advertising
Saturn
turning off a lot of
yesterday.
people, though.
We were at
Potentially.
retail today in 1800 Toys R Us.
Dude, the Sega Saturn had like a $399 US price.
Electronic boutique stores
I thought you said $199.
around the US and Canada. Our retail
No.
price
The 199 was the Dreamcast. The
Oh, the
299
Dreamcast. Okay, my
is what
bad.
they lowered it to after Sony revealed 299 for the PlayStation.
Okay, my bad.
Our total rollout
Yeah.
will take the summer to complete, but we're starting today in store and starting today on primetime TV.
Well, it was awarded a higher review rating than PlayStation by the Famicom magazine.
It's been an honor.
That's interesting.
Give it 3.5 stars out of 5. Rated the Saturn 8, 6, 7, and 8 out of 10. The PlayStation 9, 10, and 9 and 9 out of 10 by the EGM, Electronic Gaming Monthly.
Okay.
Whoa, Sony!
Yeah, we're starting their block, it looks like. Already their block's a lot more interesting. They didn't go into a PowerPoint presentation about PCs.
A little bit. But once again, though, you can tell they don't really have games. At least to show off at this point. This seems more like a traditional media thing.
Well, yeah, from what I recall, they don't really have a lot of games that came out for the PlayStation launch.
Smaller is better. And bigger is way better.
Yeah, you know, actually, I could see Sony really leaning into the, hey, look at all the other products we've made. Look at what people use them for. Believe in our console, you know?
A movie decides the paper.
Yeah,
Because yeah, back then
I
they
think
made
it makes
TVs. Yeah, it does, right? Because yeah, back then they, oh, look at Walkman. No one, so many people watching this later probably aren't gonna know what the hell that even is. But it was a big deal back then, I promise.
yeah, I had a Walkman way back when. One that took like CDs. I actually used to at least them out. They were pretty cool.
Well, a Walkman that takes CDs is called a Discman, technically.
Okay, technically, but it was the Sony Walkman.
Yeah, see, Sony's really leaning into the, hey, we invented this, we did that. I don't know what an MD is, but sure. It's like, we did this. And now, video games.
Now this
And
is
if you're a big company, electronic company especially, and you don't really have a lot to show with, you kind of gotta go with brand recognition, because this is the first console on the market.
Yeah. So just kind of looking at, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I wouldn't be surprised if when we get there, if Xbox did a very similar thing before they came, or Microsoft, sorry, before they came out with the Xbox.
Probably. I could see that. So just looking at the stuff with the Sega Saturn, it seems like overall it was pretty well received. At least averages were okay. But I guess Sega was criticized for its management of the Saturn mostly,
Okay.
saying that the staff had fallen out of touch with both the demands of the market and the industry.
Okay.
And yeah, then they eventually just abandoned the Saturn. So I guess maybe they didn't really see it as being too worthwhile to keep around, especially compared to the Genesis, maybe.
Yeah.
'Cause I think they still kept the Genesis going, weirdly enough.
Big deals that don't have to be big. Be big.
Well, I assume it's one of those transitions where people didn't really jump to the new product, and because people not jumping to the new product, less games were made, and it's kind of just like a self-fulfilling cycle.
Yeah. Also, the traditional logo. Man.
Yeah.
Okay, Sony, sell me on the PlayStation.
Don't mind like the 3 PlayStations we have in the other room.
Focus on the burgeoning multimedia marketplace. The Sony Electronic Publishing Company. Sony Corporation of America CEO Michael Schulhoff appointed Olaf Olafsson as president of this new operation.
Actually, right, we do have 3 PlayStations in the other
Olaf
room.
directs worldwide operations for Sony businesses that include Sony Computer Entertainment of America, Sony Computer Entertainment of Europe, Sony ImageSoft, and Sony Psygnosis. He also oversees sales and marketing operations for Sony's CD-ROM manufacturing business.
And look at that stash.
At the same time, Olaf finds time
Yeah.
to write.
Very nice.
Today, he's
I
written 3
appreciate
novels, a collection of short stories, and a play. His latest novel, Absolution, has been published by Random House. Forbes calls the Iceland-born Olafsson, quote, a top-notch Nordic novelist who may become that true rarity, an Icelandic Nobel Prize winner. And the story doesn't end there. Olaf is also a physicist from Brandeis University. In total, his background reflects a synthesis of talents and knowledge required to run a technology and content-driven business. Without any further delay, I'm pleased to introduce you to Olaf Olafsson.
It's a baby face. Boo, get out of there.
You can tell from the video that
Give me
I don't
Stash Man back.
represent a conventional video game company. This morning I hope to show you why that may be the best news our industry could possibly receive. I'm going to start by discussing this industry that Sony is about to enter, the interactive entertainment platform business. But first let me note that I'm pleased I'm not welcoming all of you to Philadelphia. By that I mean that it's obvious to us all that we are not in a tent. Instead, for the first time, we're indoors at our own trade show. Industry momentum, accelerating to the tune of $5 billion in annual sales, has moved us from the CES parking lot.
That's what Tika said too.
It's no coincidence that Sony's PlayStation introduction coincides with this development. There is significant activity underway in the marketplace.
That's a pretty
And now
big,
is
bold
the
claim,
time
Sony.
for a definitive technology. $5 billion in sales is an impressive achievement. But as we move forward, we need to look carefully at where we're headed as an industry. As an industry, we need to ask the questions I'll attempt to answer today. How can we expand our audience and in turn our business? How can we move beyond the current dip in the hardware cycle at 16-bit and reach our 6, 7, 8, or even $10 billion potential? The answer, simply enough, begins with technology. We all know our business is cyclical. Advances in technology come and go about every 5 years, 4-bit, 8-bit, 16-bit, and each new technology has promoted growth in both hardware and software sales. Now, however, we're in a position to grow much, much faster. In the 16-bit past, technology certainly got us closer to achieving our creative goals, but not nearly close enough. And this is evident by the pending collapse of the 16-bit platforms, which we're all witnessing much faster than anyone anticipated. Let's look at 16-bit technology for a second.
Okay, I'll gladly take a look.
Animated sprites that made it nearly impossible for the creative community to move beyond riddle-based puzzle-type games. Look at sports games, games where the consumer craved realism. The software community certainly did its best to deliver, but it was still extremely restricted. In the movies, it would be the equivalent of directing a film where the hero could only move from side to side, and the special effects consisted of a scrolling background. Imagine a rich film like The Shawshank Redemption. How compelling would it be if Tim Robbins or Morgan Freeman could only speak for 20 minutes without reducing the frame rate or without losing colors or motion? And the computer platform doesn't offer the answer either. Computers are
Yeah, so once again, shitting on PC.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I wonder if Nintendo's gonna do that too. I like how computers were just the enemy back then.
Well, they were the competition, and I mean, they still were pretty new to market. I think they were kind of just starting to pick up speed of like becoming in more people's homes within like the late 90s.
And always has, to books, to compact discs, to video cassettes.
I don't know. I still find it really interesting how they're not like, we're better than Nintendo. Well, apart from that one jab at Sony, Sega did. But it's like, we sold more in Japan. They're not really like saying, oh, we're better than so-and-so. It's like, well, PCs, we're better than PCs. That's funny.
A rainy Sunday afternoon on an 800 number, finding out how to load the software. It's an extremely frustrating experience for the average consumer.
Man, it really has come full circle with PC being the most instant access to entertainment.
Not a multifunction.
It's like, you want to play a
Yeah,
game, go on Steam, pick it up, hit play. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very much accessible with stuff like Steam and even Epic to an extent.
Yeah.
They're not quite there yet, but they're getting close, I think.
We keep on top of our target.
Man, look at that car, dude. That car, classic now, probably the height of vehicles back then.
Interactive entertainment that will sustain and grow this
Easy
interest.
access, meanwhile no cars today really use keys anymore.
If it's true that entertainment consumers are demanding, then our gamers are demanding to the nth power. Our key consumer is the digital kid who expects technology to be different.
Today's
every
gamer.
day.
Oh boy.
He can't remember anything before MTV and the PC. He lives in a fast-moving technoscape with the soundbite and the 20-second commercial as he eats shock radio for breakfast. The internet is his lunch. But if we continue to serve him 2D scrolling games, he'll leave the table. As a result, we'll never grow as an industry. So the question is, how do we become dinner? We become dinner by finally delivering on that much-used phrase, next generation. And that's just what we are talking about.
All right, it begins.
Has to provide
I wonder if that's the first use of it.
the immersive,
I wouldn't be surprised if it
technology
is.
of the Sony PlayStation. It's a huge difference in interactive entertainment, and the whole industry is going to benefit.
Hey, there it is.
As an industry,
The man itself.
we must learn from the experiences of other entertainment media. Media which have consistently delivered technological advances to enhance entertainment and to stimulate industry growth. We would never be watching them today without better technology every step of the way. Sound, color, advances in camera equipment, sound stages, special effects. Just look at the difference between King Kong and Jurassic Park. Today's
Yeah, fair.
audiences
Doesn't sound like Jurassic Park.
visually,
I mean, I guess.
and emotionally. And entertainment today needs to target several senses. The same applies to television. Advancing technology has always been critical to its popularity.
Because they're trying to make the point that they're going to be the most advanced technology, I guess.
Visual radio,
Yeah.
Which, I mean, is kind of true, to be fair.
Yeah, that was a big thing about their marketing pushes. I think that's really the reason why they said they were going to the CD versus the cartridges.
It's a medium that kept its audience by diversifying.
See, then Nintendo tried that. Then they went straight back to cartridges, which, I mean, hey,
Because the video game
been doing fine.
is, at its heart, in the entertainment.
Well, yeah, like I don't think there's anything inherently wrong about cartridges.
Now, I just find it funny that Nintendo was on the cartridge, then they got off the cartridge for a little bit, and then they just went back on with the Switch. They're like, actually, we like the cartridge system.
Well, they were also doing it for the DS, the Game Boy Advance, 3DS.
Well, yeah, true.
I don't know, maybe it's because they were moving into that demographic where it's more suited for kids. Maybe they thought this weren't really appropriate for kids because they would get wrecked over time.
I mean, maybe.
In a remarkably short period of time. An industry as big as the domestic motion picture box office. And today we have the attention.
I wouldn't be
and
surprised if they
dollars
even did it to
of
kind of make
entertainment's
them
biggest
stand out a
consumers,
little bit
gamers.
from Sony and Microsoft.
These
I mean, to be fair, it kind of worked. Because,
Good.
like, what's the benefit of a cartridge again? Is it, like, just faster load times and stuff? Like, because it does have benefit. I remember it does have benefits.
I would assume it's probably just faster load time and ease of transport when you're trying to carry a bunch of them.
Maybe. Let's see.
Makes it more affordable.
Easier and easier for the viewers to suspend disbelief. Viewers encountered technology which became more invisible to them. The technology
versus
delivered
cartridge.
a more seamless experience, which ultimately became more involving entertainment. Pre-next-generation game technology still makes it impossible for the gamer to suspend disbelief.
I'm just like having a little peek here.
Will not get immersed in a
Yeah.
2D world with such standard graphics, animation, and sounds. We gotta get him pulled into the game, to the story, and to get him immersed. This is the immersive entertainment I alluded to earlier. PlayStation, superior technology, was developed to deliver an immersive, totally absorbing entertainment experience.
Oh, okay. I guess part of it is you can also like store the save games themselves in the cartridge because they have flash storage.
Okay.
We invented the transistor radio, portable music.
And they have
Yeah, I guess it makes sense because they didn't want to go to proprietary memory like the memory cards.
yeah, and they do have faster load times because they have read-only flash storage or ROM chips.
From all sectors of
Okay.
consumer electronics, to motion picture studios, music labels, TV
That's fragile. So there are benefits. Yeah, you can put more on a disc, right? Is that
has been invested.
right? Like, was that the benefit of the disc?
Yeah, that was the big thing of the disc, especially between like the PlayStation and the N64. Like the PlayStation, if I recall, the disc could hold somewhere around 750 megabytes, while the max cartridge for the N64 was like 32 megabytes.
Hardware and software come
Yeah.
together.
So it was quite a big of a difference in the amount of data you could store on the disc, which is why companies like PlayStation went towards the discs.
The first Sony company.
Yeah, which is interesting, right? I do like there was kind of that split between the cartridge and disc, and there still kind of is now, except I guess you can't really call what Sony or what Nintendo uses the cartridge anymore. It's more of an SD card for their games.
And Sony, the global.
Yeah, I think for them it's probably more of a novelty / nostalgia thing is probably the reason why they've stayed with the cartridges.
Represents a tremendously significant product launch for Sony.
They might also be at a point where there's really no difference between the two necessarily, apart from maybe like
Research and development,
slight differences.
manufacturing, marketing, distribution.
I don't know for sure. I'm not a technology expert in that regard.
Sony's
But I won't be surprised if the technologies have both advanced to a point where they're not really that dissimilar from each
the
other.
benefit of Sony's 20-year
Yeah, like I can't imagine the reading the memory on the cartridge is all that much different than this. The only big difference is the storage size again. Because from what I recall, I think the Switch cartridges only store to a maximum of like 32 gigabytes for a bigger cartridge, which is generally why a lot of bigger games that get ported to Switch will have some kind of downloadable portion for part of the game, because it only stores so much on the original cartridge.
Maybe. That
But
could
a
be it.
Blu-ray disc can hold roughly 100 gigabytes between the two layers it has.
Even with plumbers, this was kind of
Oh,
But
man,
actually straight up showing
no.
Nintendo.
But now, it's time for a station break. Introducing Sony PlayStation, the
Yeah.
breakthrough that takes gamers deeper into the game. It's totally immersive entertainment, and it forever changes the rules of the game.
That reminds me of a lot of those really old commercials where they just like act really into the game and they're just hitting random buttons.
I mean, it's funny. It's a power station.
Power station. I can see why their advertisement probably went a lot better with the masses than Sega.
Yeah, Sega's was more weird, and Sony's was just more like, well, here's how immersed you can get into a game.
Yeah, but they were kind of going for
30
the same
frames,
idea, but Sega went for the very strange / comedic approach, and
Yeah.
Sony's going for the more like futuristic, immersive, engaging type of advertising.
Yeah.
It has the power of a 3D graphics workstation, but it's just for fun.
It's a PlayStation. Really, the name actually is very clever too. I never really thought about it, but yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's a
Like, it's-
workstation that you can play on. It's a PlayStation.
Yeah, like it seems like they're advertising it to essentially have the same power as like a PC, but it only works in games, and it's
Yeah.
emphasized in the game.
Incredibly
It's a gas station too, apparently.
co-creative entertainment.
And whoever came up with the name PlayStation must be like slapping themselves in the back.
Probably. Also, Megan, just so you know, every now and then you're going like slight muffle. Like, not to the point where I can't understand you, but just every now and then it is slightly there.
okay.
Not a big deal.
$1
It's not like a huge deal, just, you know. I just don't want you to be too muffled.
Yeah, no, it's okay. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, no, you're welcome.
Sony PlayStation. Intimate.
The crowd definitely seems a lot more interested in that advertising too.
Yeah. Oh boy, the whole PlayStation team.
The talent behind PlayStation Entertainment now encompasses more than 400.
That's a lot more publishers and developers than what Sega had too. I'm pretty sure.
That is, yeah. 'Cause they only had like 100.
Yeah.
In interactive entertainment. Names that
And
include
before
Data
Nintendo comes
29,
out and they're like, we have 1,000.
Interplay, Virgin Interactive,
I do find it funny how that was like a big selling point of consoles back then. But then like years later we had Nintendo's conference with the Wii U and they essentially had no third-party support.
Yeah.
To CD-based technology. A commitment that means television video quality and CD audio quality, which the ROM-based cartridges cannot touch.
I guess it's true. CDs also had like, I think, better audio quality and stuff to them too. I think.
Production cycles
Yeah.
and investment in the best games, not the biggest inventory. Huge inventory costs and the risks associated with ROM-based cartridges are about to become.
I wonder what developers preferred back then.
PlayStation technology.
I wonder if they preferred cartridge or a CD.
Digital experience.
From what I understand, I think they kind of prefer the CD just because of the extra space, the more freedom with the audio quality like they mentioned, and just like the ease of production, it was also a lot cheaper.
Yeah, true. That would be a bit cheaper.
In real time, multiple camera angles and hyper-realistic simulations. A system named for the power of a $50,000 workstation, harnessed for gaining play at a somewhat more affordable price.
And I still love how the PlayStation 1 looked. It just looked like such a good looking console. You know?
Yeah.
Like for back then especially. Like it's very simple, but it has such a unique look to it. How like the little disc then kind of pops out slightly.
Yeah, I always really liked the disc tray in the PS1.
Yeah, I
It was
always
very
really liked
easy to
it.
use. PlayStation's promise. Ooh.
Consumers will be surprised by the power of PlayStation's technology. Absorbed in unequal interactive experience. And they will be sold in the names behind the PlayStation games. If events in
I
Japan,
mean, okay, so did they keep those promises?
consumers are going to vote with their dollars for the play.
I think to a degree they did.
In Japan, under the leadership
Yeah,
of
like I think
Sega
even after the Dreamcast came out, like the Dreamcast I think was technically more powerful than the PlayStation, but it just didn't have the developers behind it or the games behind it really.
Now let me get
Yeah.
to the best use of
Well, I mean,
all.
I imagine the Dreamcast was more powerful since it came out quite a few years later.
Only true next generation.
Well, yeah.
But I mean, like, by then you also had like the PS2 coming out, right? Because wasn't the PS2 like 2002 or 2001?
I think it was 2001.
Since it's a beautiful day here in
Once again, they're
Orlando,
using the next generation system.
Sony Computer
And in
Entertainment
quotes too. They must have come up with it, yeah.
Steve Reyes, join me
Yeah.
for
And now just everybody uses it.
a brief presentation.
It's like, here's your next generation in entertainment. For like everybody. Literally every company says that now.
I mean, it is a good phrase because it does put quite a bit of a difference between the previous tech and the new tech.
It
So
does.
it allows there to be that differentiation between the two.
Hold up. I just want to go back here because I think they're literally bringing him up just to announce the price. And I want to hear the crowd's response to this. Because he just
Yeah, I
came
do
up and announced the
remember
price
seeing
and then he leaves. So let's see. Hold on, we'll go back a little bit.
$299.
That's such a Chad move, dude. That's such
That is
a dunk
quite
on
a Chad
Sega.
move.
That's such a dunk on Sega too. It's like, what's the price? $100 less than their competition. It's like, damn. And man, if only they knew about the PS3 many years later, when everybody would say it's that gets the opposite of this. It's like a $5.99. No, not into that. Nobody's cheering Sega for that one. That's such a Chad move here, though.
$299 retail price. We've achieved a magic mass market price point. This good news will be realized at PlayStation's launch, which, as Steve announced last night, will be Saturday, September 9th. Then the gamer will find more than
20 plus titles at launch?
at over 12,000
That's pretty good.
That is.
nationwide.
So I just went into an inflation calculator because I was kind of curious.
Mhm.
So $299 in 1995 is the equivalent of $534 in today's money.
So that's interesting. Considering how that's not that much different from what a PS3 actually did come out to, and everybody hated it.
And as an industry, we are now in a position.
Yeah, I think that's actually pretty close to what the PS5 costs in the States as well, because it's $499 retail price. So aside from the PS3, they've kept their cost of their consoles pretty consistent, it seems.
It seems like it.
We look forward to a bright future, empowered by technology.
To be fair though, back then, like, money also probably went a lot farther in general than what it does now.
Oh, for sure, it does.
So like, even though I can see that and go like, well, you know, it's not really too far off from what the PS3 was, and everybody hated that one. It's like, well, yeah, but back then you could probably have your house completely paid off, like, much quicker than what you could now.
Yeah.
So you didn't really, and bills probably were much lower, so you didn't really have as much to worry about. Like, even taking into inflation into account. Into the game. Yeah, no, I will say I am much more into this advertising than I was with Sega.
Yeah, the Sega stuff was just too weird and quirky. And plus, it didn't really show a lot of what the console could do.
Yeah. Nintendo. Alright, so what does Nintendo have?
The University of California School of Law. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in
Yeah, I don't know
welcoming
much
our-
about what Nintendo might have been presenting at this time period.
So who's even gonna be the keynote speaker for Nintendo? Not even too sure who they had.
Thank you, Pat, and good morning, everyone. Well, this certainly is a week of great excitement and celebration for the interactive entertainment industry, and that's especially true for those of us who have been involved in this business now for over a decade. For one thing, this show focused on our specific form of fun serves, I think, to validate interactive entertainment as a permanent form of consumer recreation. The days when this business could be dismissed as just a passing fad are fortunately long gone. And the future of this business would appear to be very bright indeed. But like any relatively new and growing industry, we do face some challenges. That's what I'd like to talk about this morning. Incidentally, last week the Wall Street Journal said that some people in this industry think that I'm either a visionary or an idiot. I'm not really sure who these people are or which side of the fence they're on, but just to avoid any confusion, I've decided this morning to wear my visionary hat. I suspect that there may be some in the audience who think that the challenges that our industry faces are distinctly Nintendo's. After all, isn't Nintendo the company that is still pouring significant resources and creativity into 16-bit video games when the industry seems intent on moving onward? Well, yes, we are, and we intend to keep doing it. We have no plans to abandon this huge installed base as long as we can continue to make entertaining games. And isn't Nintendo the company launching Virtual Boy, an entirely new type of video game?
Virtual Boy, huh?
One where the interface is a pair of goggles instead of a TV screen where the graphics are truly 3D, but still monochromatic. Well, That's us. We're confident that game players are going to love not only this new entertainment experience offered by Virtual Boy, but that they'll especially like the suggested retail price of $179.95 for this 32-bit experience with a game packed in. But no question about it, Nintendo has its own challenges, and I'm very confident that we will meet them.
Not gonna lie, every time it does that with the camera sound, I get a little bit startled every now and again.
Yeah, that's pretty loud.
That is very loud.
Interactive entertainment company. Certainly, one of the biggest challenges that we all face is how to continually entertain and excite our core consumer. Of course, in our case, that's the avid video game player, young and old alike. Let me explain how Nintendo has, just this past week, responded to that challenge. It seems to me, as a veteran of nearly 15 years in this industry, that the peaks and valleys of video game business over any given period of time mirror very closely the relative entertainment value of our games. I suppose you could even build a business model to show this. I call it the Game Player Boredom Index. And put another way, every time someone creates a video game masterpiece, they raise the entertainment bar for everyone in the industry. Let's face it, game players always recognize quality, and they enthusiastically flock to it. Witness the 7.5 million Donkey Kong Country cartridges that we have sold worldwide since last November. Likewise, once we give consumers a Donkey Kong Country, they naturally expect that everything else out there on store shelves and everything to come will be just as good, if not better, in terms of entertainment value. And it's this never-ending quest for better games that's really behind our decision to move the introduction
the Nintendo Ultra 64, yeah.
Oh yeah, so this would have been their project that they were doing with Philips before it got canceled.
Once we introduced Donkey Kong,
was it Philips?
I thought it was Philips doing like the CD-ROM attachment or console, or was it Sony?
I thought it was Sony. Let me see.
It might have been Sony.
Set a much higher quality standard for our
Nintendo Ultra 64
platform. I can tell you that Silicon Graphics and Nintendo have created an extraordinarily powerful new hardware platform.
Okay, so no, the Nintendo Ultra 64 is just what the Nintendo 64 was called before they just dropped the word Ultra.
That makes sense.
So this isn't the actual thing they're talking about. Because I think, like, I don't think they'd be advertising it if Sony's now a competitor, right?
Oh, that's
Sony,
true. That probably would have happened before this.
Yeah, because I think it was planned to be an attachment later on for the Nintendo 64. But then what was it? They just decided they didn't want it, and Sony was like, okay, we'll just take this technology and make our own console.
Yeah, pretty much.
Donkey Kong Country 2 games for the Super NES, which are debuting here at E3.
I think it's a good thing that they dropped the word Ultra from the game console, though. It's a bit too much.
Yeah, it is.
Beyond Donkey Kong Country.
You want your console name to be concise, easy to remember, and catchy.
Yeah.
The 32-bit software being exhibited here at E3. What this means is that the quality of video games now under development for Nintendo Ultra 64 simply must be better. Much better.
I wonder if that's what the logo was going to be, too.
But a lot.
Like before we got the weird Nintendo, like, block end that they made.
To achieve that
Probably.
Because I prefer the block end as well. You know, like the green and red one. And blue,
Yeah.
I think, is on it, too. I don't quite recall.
I think there's a little bit of blue, yeah.
Again on ourselves and our third-party publishers. You will see completed Nintendo Ultra 64 games this November in Tokyo at
the Tokyo Game Show.
when we officially unveil the new product.
This, I think it's supposed to be the
Of
Tokyo
course,
Game Show.
Las Vegas,
But I think they said trade show, so maybe not.
Consumer Electronics Show next January. In reaching this decision, and in meeting this particular challenge, we have, I believe, remained faithful to the people who purchase our games and expect to be entertained by them. But every company must wrestle with these questions of quality and timing. And my purpose here this morning is to move beyond those kind of internal decisions.
So I think they have all used the term interactive entertainment.
What I consider a far more dangerous
Yeah.
challenge that confronts all of us in the interactive entertainment business. One which applies not only to Nintendo, but to Nintendo, Sega, and Sony, and indeed to all entertainment software publishers, regardless of the hardware platform. And the challenge that I want to address this morning affects every person whose livelihood is dependent upon the creation, manufacturing, marketing, and distribution of interactive entertainment. And as I introduce this challenge, I must admit that at first glance it appears rather benign. This innocent-looking thing is known as the video game copier, a machine to make counterfeit software. And the one displayed here is marketed under the name Super Wildcard.
I've never actually seen this before.
And that name is certainly appropriate because
Yeah, neither have I.
into the future of interactive entertainment, that's precisely what it represents. The Super Wildcard and products like it immediately expand the already daunting problem for software counterfeiting.
So that's how they
and the
counterfeited games
border
back then, huh?
features of cyberspace. And there, the prospects for protecting our businesses, for protecting our employees, for protecting the products of our imagination.
You know, it's kind of funny though, how I guess even back then Nintendo, I mean all companies are like down with piracy, but I like how it's kind of fitting that Nintendo's the only one that really brought it up, considering how hard they DMCA literally anybody.
Bombarded with numbers that
Yeah.
try to put the counterfeiting story into context. For example, the Business Software Alliance recently estimated
So it's like really on point with them. It's interesting.
pirated business software at over $15 billion per year. Counterfeiters are now putting a dozen albums worth of popular music on a single audio CD, selling it for a couple of dollars. We know that bootleg copies of Disney's Lion King video were widely available throughout Asia. long
Classic
before
VHS
the
tape box.
product hit the store shelves here in this country. But I want to concentrate solely on the impact of counterfeiting to our interactive entertainment industry. We conservatively estimated that the loss to counterfeit entertainment software, whether for play on home video game systems or personal computers, is at least $5 billion per year. Let me focus a little more narrowly.
What, $5 billion?
In the last fully reported fiscal year, Nintendo realized $4.7 billion, all attributable to sales of home video game products. And our nearest competitor, Sega, had revenues of $3.4 billion, of which $2.9 billion were directly attributable to home video game sales. Now, I think it's fair to say that along with a number of independent third-party publishers, Nintendo and Sega pretty much define the current video game industry. But this assessment ignores a third major player, the counterfeiter. Worldwide revenue losses to Nintendo and its third-party publishers last year alone from all pirated activity came to approximately $2.5 billion, and I suspect that Sega had comparable losses. So while it's common to look at worldwide market shares like this, Nintendo and Sega products are high, in fact, there is a much more accurate way to represent the current state of affairs in the real world. there is a third major player, the counterfeiter.
Hmm.
And his piece of the action is the most profitable.
It's interesting to think it really was that bad back then.
And others without bearing
I don't know
Yeah.
how it is now, mind you.
of our development, distribution, and marketing costs.
I'd say overall it's probably gone down, especially for the consoles, but it's still pretty prevalent.
Ignore the danger of counterfeiting, to consider it just a cost of doing business, and to write off anti-piracy programs as a legal expense, something for our lawyers to focus on. Indeed, why am I even up here today talking about this problem when I could probably wax eloquent about the social benefits of playing video games or buying Nintendo products? Well, I'm here today because I happen to think that it's absolutely essential that we talk about this problem. This is something that requires heightened awareness on the part of all of us to play a role in what we hope will continue to be a growing business. And if we ignore this problem or fail to keep it in proper perspective, we do so at an ever-increasing risk. Because, ladies and gentlemen, the bad guys happen to be getting much better at their work. Make no mistake about it. Let me show you what I mean.
Show me what you mean.
On the left is a copy of the legitimate Nintendo cartridge for one of the claims mega hits, Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah?
The right is an all but
Can't really see a difference.
version. In many cases, the games play equally well on the cartridge. In fact, what first alerted us to counterfeit versions of Donkey Kong Country, here shown on the right, were complaints from game players in some parts of the world that they couldn't save their progress when they turned the game off. The counterfeiters, to further increase their profit margins, had simply eliminated our battery backup. The impact of this counterfeiting problem is overwhelming.
That would be pretty annoying.
And it shows every sign
Yeah.
of getting worse, much, much worse. We estimate the potential size of the worldwide market for legitimate interactive entertainment products at something between 2 and 3 times current levels. Now think about
Yeah, it
that.
really kind of shows you as well, like, where the company's heads were at in terms of what they saw as kind of like an issue, right? With
Yeah.
Sega and Sony, it's like, okay, PC, kind of scary, could probably cut into us a little bit. Let's try and just say, like, hey, PC's not great. Nintendo's like, what's our biggest issue? Well, we're not scared of PC. We're pretty big when it comes to video games already. What we're scared of are people counterfeiting our games.
The Middle East, Russia,
Yeah.
and Eastern Europe, free of counterfeiters who are now polluting and destroying these potential markets. Consider this.
So, like, Nintendo back then had a lot of confidence in at least their ability to not be bullied out by PC.
Nations with the most egregious counterfeit markets. Here are the 4 worst offenders. Of all of the software currently in existence in India, 87%
That honestly makes a lot of sense. From what I know,
Yeah.
that you have a lot of counterfeit stuff in, like, the Asia and in, well, the former USSR areas too, especially for back then.
Virtually every software program in a nation of over 1 billion people was stolen from its rightful owner. In fact, in China, counterfeiting has actually become a growth industry.
Like, I'm not gonna lie, if we ever go to, like, a place like that, like in that part of the world, I'd be interested to check out the market and see what sort of counterfeit stuff they have. Not saying I wouldn't like to buy any, but I'd be kind of curious, right?
And many of the people in these countries are now or will soon be able to afford our entertainment products. So if you believe that the interactive entertainment industry is healthy now, think what it could be like if it existed as well inside of the borders of just these 4 additional nations. And
It's interesting, yeah, they were looking for a lot of growth in the other areas too, in the areas that had a lot of counterfeit.
Business into these new markets. But the impact of counterfeiting is more than just the corporate bottom line. Right now, the clear majority of all software is created right here in the United States. And the growth of counterfeit software undeniably threatens the jobs of hundreds of thousands of Americans who directly create and market software, including a number of people in this room and many here at E3. Well, how do we deal with this problem? At Nintendo, we've been trying to answer that question now for over a decade. And the experience we've obtained has taught us a few things. As we see it, effective deterrence in any country requires at least three things. First, there must be laws which fully protect creators of intellectual property. Second, the will and ability to enforce those laws must exist, and that means both stringent customs work and constant, diligent law enforcement. I must tell you that we at Nintendo regard the work of the U.S. Trade Representative's Office under the leadership of Ambassador Nikki Cantor as the single most effective means right now of ridding this planet of counterfeiters. But the protection of intellectual property around the world should not be the responsibility of the U.S. government alone. It seems to me that all governments need to recognize that there is no safe haven, and there should be no safe haven for pirates, whether they board ships as in the old days or manufacture fake products in violation of somebody else's.
I don't know. I just do find it really funny that like Nintendo is still fighting the same crusade.
Yeah.
And I mean time and money from every viable company within an industry. Enforcement will fail. And in the case of the interactive entertainment industry, it means that relying on Nintendo or Sega alone to fight video game counterfeiting just will not cut it. Every company here, every company at E3, big and small, must do its share in one way or the other. Finally, deterrent number 3 would seem to be the easiest. Simple understanding. But in some ways, it's the most difficult. I suspect that some governments may actually see short-term economic gain in counterfeiting and either condone or actually support it. What they fail to realize is that in the long term, severely hampering the birth of a native information and entertainment software industry within their borders. Here again is the super wild card. Let me tell you a little bit more about it. It's an accessory being manufactured right now in Taiwan and Hong Kong, which is readily available around the world. It attaches to the Super NES or the Sega Genesis, and in non-technical terms, sucks the computer code right off the silicon and deposits it directly onto a floppy disk.
It's so interesting.
It's not cheap, $200 to $500. But obviously, this is not a big obstacle. Currently, sales of these devices in Hong Kong alone are running at fully 40% of the unit volumes of 16-bit consoles. And the reason is simple. That investment makes possible the perfect copy of any available video game cartridge in the world with a minimal cost of a floppy disk. In fact, while you wait, parlors utilizing these copiers have sprung up throughout Hong Kong, where a consumer can walk into a shop, point at
Look at all the consoles up there.
His favorite video game title,
Yeah, that's quite a few.
and walk out carrying floppy disks containing maybe $400 or $500 worth of hit games for just a couple of dollars. And the impact? Well, consider this. In Hong Kong, a market with an installed base of over 500,000 16-bit hardware systems, Sega recently reported that initial sales of its lead release of last year, Sonic & Knuckles, totaled 200 pieces. 200. And if you think Hong Kong is a long way away, take a look at this. Here's an advertisement in a current issue.
Assemble your own video game recorder system.
Magazine,
Huh.
a well-respected U.S.
Huh.
magazine, offering, and I quote, add-on video game systems that hook up easily to existing systems, end quote. The payoff, according to this ad, parents and players rejoice. Pay 60 cents a game, not $60. Rejoice indeed. What this device represents is the explosion of video game counterfeiting into the limitless, borderless, and all but lawless reaches of cyberspace. And in that sense, we in the video game business now face all of the dangers which have confronted PC software developers for some time. Like it or not, our software is posted on network bulletin boards as soon as it comes to market. In a sense, though, our task is even more difficult, because instead of enforcing morality among adults perhaps interested in a single spreadsheet program, we're faced with explaining ethics and intellectual property rights to a world full of teenagers ravenous for our form of entertainment. Make no mistake about it, cyberspace is different. This is a world where every user is a potential illegal distributor, and that distributor is extremely difficult to detect or even identify. What's more, if he's suspected, escape is quite simple. Unlike the typical video game counterfeiter working with millions of cartridges over tens of thousands of square feet of manufacturing space, the cyberspace pirate can destroy material evidence in the matter of a few keystrokes. For those who believe that cyberspace holds the greatest promise for individual writers, artists, or even business people, let me suggest that in the near term, those who may benefit most are the lawyers and the crooks. And as a lawyer by training, yes, I do distinguish between the two. What is yet to be balanced in cyberspace is the right to freedom of speech on the one hand and the right to privacy on the other. And it's here in this matter of understanding that the greatest challenge lies.
The balance of freedom of speech versus piracy, or privacy.
It would appear that the right of privacy is interpreted differently depending upon whose privacy is being. On the part of the individual, privacy is seen as an absolute right. But to some, corporate privacy in the form of protected intellectual property doesn't seem to exist at all. In the words of the presidential group exploring the information infrastructure, quote, there seems to be an attitude by some on the internet that you check your copyrights at the door when you enter that domain.
That hasn't really changed either much, has it?
The registrar of copyrights recently called the internet the biggest copying machine in the world.
It's also kind of true, to be fair.
Who coined the term
Yeah.
cyberspace in the early 1980s also established the now familiar dramatic conflict between so-called heroes in the form of computer hackers against villains cast as evil multinational. Unfortunately, some in the media have accepted this nonsense. They too sometimes celebrate the hacker hero. And this in turn has acted to help authenticate the absurd rationalization, and I quote, information wants to be free. This, of course, has all of the inherent logic of the auto thief who explains to the police that the minivan in your garage just wanted to be free. What's more, this absolute freedom of information is demanded by some, itself threatens the information infrastructure. Most would agree with the Clinton administration official Sally Katson, who warns that people will not use the information infrastructure unless they have confidence that their information is going where they want it to, when they want it to, and nowhere else. In other words, Protection of personal privacy is essential, but the same protection should hold true for corporations. You can't support one and not the other. Freely disseminate proprietary information owned by corporations, their legally protected intellectual property, is to strip it of commercial value and in turn destroy the promise of the information infrastructure. Without the profits of those original Donkey Kong arcade...
So I'm not really saying a whole lot, by the way. I'm just kind of really intrigued by what Nintendo's talking about here.
Donkey Kong Country for the world's video game players in 1994.
Yeah.
That game alone required an investment of
But
millions of dollars.
you seem more unsure.
I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. I didn't think their presentation would have quite this much of a focus on piracy.
Well, see, that's the thing too. Right? Like, it's interesting. Like, I'm sure to a good number of people, it's probably like boring and not interesting, and not something E3 should really be. But it's interesting to see just how important it is to Nintendo. They're not really talking about their games. They're like, well, here's Nintendo Ultra 64. We're making it, but piracy, big deal. Right?
Yeah.
Thus, the legal protection of information is not a threat to cyberspace.
I feel like it really kind of shows that to them. They're like, we are the biggest company right now. We don't really need to show you anything. You already know we're good.
Yeah.
So we're just going to talk about something that's important to us and the game industry as at large. We don't need to sell you on anything.
Provide additional protection to intellectual property in cyberspace, and they deserve this industry's wholehearted support. Now, not everyone may share my views on protecting information, especially some of those on the internet. So this morning, as I began speaking, a copy of my remarks were entered into the Nintendo corporate bulletin board on America Online. You'll also find it at our website on the internet. I look forward to hearing from those who may disagree with me. In conclusion, let me repeat that the global protection of intellectual property is absolutely essential to fully expand the potential of readily exchangeable information and entertainment. It's vital in order to nurture the development of legitimate and valuable national software markets in nations like China, where counterfeit goods right now smother all opportunity. And it's also vital in this country. Today, in the U.S., thousands of small companies are struggling with success in the emerging field of multimedia. And the potential for what they can produce is enormous. The ability to make our lives more productive and more fun, and to do that in a way that no one has ever thought of before. Should any of those entrepreneurs strike it rich and create a breakthrough product that finds an enthusiastic audience, it still must face the threat of counterfeit. And long before that product ever reaches the mass market, its value may well have been stripped clean by people who had no part in its creation, who simply stole it. And that visionary company will disappear. Think about a world without counterfeiters. Think about the markets that such a world would open up for those of us in the interactive entertainment industry. And think about the entertainment products that such a world would foster. Not just the products created by multinational corporations, but ones created by individuals and new companies not yet even born. I think such a world is not only worth thinking and talking about, but it's a world that all of us in this room, all of us here at E3 can help create. Of course it's a big challenge. Yes, it certainly dwarfs the challenges typically identified by corporate executives who naturally tend to focus on their own company's success. But to me, it happens to be the biggest challenge and the greatest opportunity facing the interactive entertainment industry right now. So I urge each of you to join Nintendo and Sega and the other companies in this industry who are out there right now fighting international counterfeit.
You know, I'm gonna be real. I feel like Sony's keynote is actually the most classy. That means Sony. I meant Nintendo. My bad. Because he said Sony, got my mind thinking about it. But I feel like
Nice.
Nintendo's has been the most classy so far. If you know what I mean.
To be honest, I'm not really sure. Like, I guess it is the most formal, if that's what you mean.
Well, it's the most formal, and it's not like really attacking anybody. Like he even just said, you know, we here at Nintendo wish to, you know, join Sony and Sega and everything to stamp out piracy, and any other company that may come out in the future. It's like, yeah, once again, you know, just they're for the game industry. They're not trying to sell anything. Okay, so now I got the show floor. So I might cut it here, and I might have the show floor be a separate thing. I'll figure that out when time comes. But I think the show floor would be pretty interesting to see, because I'm intrigued by this. What do you think, Megan? Should I keep it as one whole thing, or do you think I should maybe make the show floor separate?
I mean, you might as well separate it because it's going to be a pretty different experience in the video, I imagine.
Yeah, it's gonna be pretty different, and it's gonna be fairly long, as you can see. Well, I don't know. I don't know if they can see.
Well, it's another like 2 hours, basically.
Yeah, it's another like 2 hours ish. So yeah. All right. So I guess we will call it for this one. So yeah, if all you came here was to see that, it's really interesting. It's a piece of history, right? Because it's not, you're not supposed to be able to see that. It's not. It wasn't broadcast anywhere, as far as I know. It's literally just this guy and his camcorder, right?
Yeah.
Like this dude right yonder here, right? So, you know, it's interesting, right? This Anthony Parisi guy. I don't know who he is now, what he's doing, but, you know, yeah, it's a history lesson, right? It's really, really cool. So, yeah, if all you did was come here for that, then hopefully you got what you wanted out of it. I also just realized when I full screen the video, it actually makes it cuts off a little bit. It's not like much would be missed, mind you, on the actual video itself, I don't think. But that's weird. I might need to maybe fix that and just see. Anyway, anyway, thank you very much, everybody, for watching that. Hope you all enjoyed. But for this part of the video, I guess it is time we cue the outro. So neat, though. Neat. Very neat stuff. So yeah, Frag out, and I will catch you guys later.
Bye.